There is a fearsome joy awaiting you, a richness so vast that it will make you tremble to think it real. Yet it is not the banks, the vaults, nor the hands of men that hold it. It is you. You tonight can step into that wealth as naturally as the night turns to day if you but listen and assume what is already yours. The silver is mine, and the gold is mine, saith the Lord of hosts. These words may strike you as simple, yet within them lies a mystery so profound that the world has labored for centuries without comprehending its true meaning. At first glance, it appears a declaration of possession, a claim upon the material wealth of the earth. But the moment you understand the law of consciousness, the moment you perceive that the Lord of hosts is not a distant, external deity, but the I am within yourself, the meaning shifts entirely. The silver and the gold are not buried in distant mountains, guarded by men, or stored in vaults that the banks hold. No, they exist in the invisible realm, waiting to be claimed by the one who knows how to enter into the state of possession. The universe does not respond to your reasoning, it responds to your consciousness, to the state in which you dwell. When the scripture says, "The silver is mine," it is speaking to you directly, whispering that all wealth exists as an idea, as a state, and that state is your consciousness. The riches you see in the world are but shadows of what is already present within you. Consider for a moment the life of a man who walks along the street, eyes fixed upon empty pockets and limited earnings. He looks upon the houses of the wealthy and the cars, the jewels and the comfort, and he thinks them distant, unreachable, bound by luck, inheritance, or the skill of others. And yet, in his own consciousness lies a power far greater than he has been taught to recognize. The silver and gold exist within the invisible realm, waiting for him to awaken, to realize that his own I am is the very Lord of hosts who declares, "The silver is mine." There is a kingdom within that he has never entered, a treasury that requires no key, no transaction, no approval from any mortal. It is the kingdom of assumption, the land where belief precedes reality. If he could but enter it, if he could but assume the feeling of possession, he would find that every gold coin, every precious stone, every resource the world offers is drawn to him as naturally as a stream flows toward the sea. I want you to think now of a woman living in a small apartment, her days consumed by the worry of bills and the fear of scarcity. Each day she counts her money, measures her limitations, and sighs at the opportunities she cannot yet see. Yet when she closes her eyes, she can picture herself in a room filled with abundance, the letters arriving, confirming gains, the coins ringing in her hands, the warm voice of someone telling her, "It is yours." In that moment of imagining, she has touched the unseen reality, and the scripture becomes alive. The silver is hers, the gold is hers, because the Lord of hosts is not absent, but within her, claiming it on her behalf. The world may appear to deny it, circumstances may seem unyielding, yet the invisible realm is unshakable. What she feels, what she assumes, must manifest, for her consciousness is the law of creation itself. There is a parable in this principle, simple yet profound. A man once lived in a village, working tirelessly, yet always in want. Each evening, he would sit quietly in his small room, imagining a banquet laid out before him, imagining himself dressed in fine garments, walking through the streets of a prosperous city. To any observer, it would appear foolish, yet within the walls of his imagination, he was already rich. Years later, he inherited a sum, found a business flourishing, and discovered opportunities that seemed miraculous. What had created this reality? Not luck, not timing, not the work of others, but the state he assumed nightly, the consciousness in which he dwelled. The scripture says, "The silver is mine," and he had lived in the state of that statement, therefore the world conformed to his imagination. You may ask, how can this be true? How can silver and gold belong to me when I have not yet touched them? The answer lies in understanding the meaning of the word mine in this context. It does not mean possession in the physical sense, It means possession in the spiritual, in the state of consciousness. The I am is the law of all life. It is the source from which all creation flows. When you identify with that I am, when you understand that it is speaking through you, all things are drawn to you. To claim the silver and gold as yours is to claim them first in the inner world. Until you do so, you remain at the mercy of circumstances, believing that wealth comes from without, when in truth it must come from within. There is a story of a merchant who, in his old age, feared poverty despite years of labor. One night, alone in his study, he read this scripture and paused. "The silver is mine, and the gold is mine," he whispered aloud. He then closed his eyes and imagined the coins clinking into his hands, the ledgers balancing perfectly, the doors of opportunity opening. He felt a joy, a confidence he had never known. Within months, business deals appeared, debts were repaid, and wealth came in streams he could not have foreseen. The world had obeyed the state of his consciousness before he had touched a single coin. This is the power of the word when understood as inner law. Notice too that the scripture does not say, "I will give you silver and gold," nor does it say, "Seek and you shall find." It declares a present reality. The silver is mine. The riches exist. They are not potential, they are actual. They wait for the consciousness that can recognize them. If you continue to seek, to chase, to hope, you are acknowledging lack. But the moment you assume, the moment you believe, the moment you dwell in the feeling of already possessing, the invisible opens to your recognition. The treasure does not have to come from without. It emerges from within and then manifests outwardly. Consider the child who dreams of playing with toys unseen in the store windows. The child imagines, believes, and feels the joy of having them. Often, adults laugh at such imagination, calling it fanciful or unreal. Yet that child demonstrates the very law that governs all riches. The unseen must be entertained first in the imagination, and what is imagined with feeling, what is assumed as true, manifests. You are that child in the kingdom of silver and gold. Your imagination, guided by the word, is the magnet drawing all riches to you. You must cultivate it, dwell within it, and know that the treasury is open and it is yours to enter. There is a danger, of course, in misunderstanding this principle. Many read the scripture and think it requires action alone, labor, or external strategy. They may work endlessly, worry ceaselessly, and yet remain in poverty. This is because they have failed to recognize the law of consciousness. The gold and silver are not won by toil, they are won by assumption. You cannot act your way into riches, you must be. You must feel already prosperous. You must speak, think, and live as though you are the possessor of all. Only then does the world bend to your state. The law is exact. It does not vary. It does not consider excuses. It responds to what you are, not to what you hope to be. Even the smallest examples of this law are visible in daily life. A man may find a coin lying on the street, not because he searched the earth, but because his consciousness recognized the value, and the invisible responded. A business may unexpectedly thrive, not because of effort alone, but because the owner dwelled in the feeling of success, and the world conformed. The silver and gold, though unseen, are drawn to the one who assumes the state of possession. Your own life contains these moments now, waiting for recognition. Each desire you hold, each wish for prosperity is already present in the invisible. It only awaits your awareness, your assumption, your belief. Even in scripture, the hidden treasures of parables speak to this truth. Consider the story of the talents, where each servant was given a measure according to his ability. Those who buried their talent in the earth returned nothing. Those who assumed responsibility, invested, and acted as though they possessed more, multiplied the gifts given them. The silver and gold, the riches of life, respond in like manner. They must be assumed, engaged, and experienced inwardly before outward manifestation occurs. To remain passive is to deny the word, to live in limitation, and to miss the treasure that belongs already to you. The moment you understand this, a shift occurs. No longer is wealth a distant hope. It becomes a present reality in your consciousness. You feel it, you know it, and the world cannot resist it. Opportunities appear, synchronicities align, and doors that seemed closed swing open. The silver and gold, previously hidden, are revealed to the one who dwells in the awareness of possession. This is the secret, that the masters have always known abundance is not earned externally, it is recognized internally. The word of God is alive, it speaks to the consciousness that hears. The silver is mine and the gold is mine, and when you accept this within yourself, all the treasures of the world become yours without struggle or striving. There is a quiet power in this understanding. It requires no argument, no reasoning, no force. It requires only the willingness to see, to assume, to dwell. To live each day as though the riches of heaven and earth are already present in your hand is the path to fulfillment. There is no other. You may labor, you may toil, but until you assume the state of the possessor, the silver and gold will remain invisible. The word calls you to awaken, to step into your inner treasury, and to know that what is declared is already true. The riches are yours because you are the I Am, the Lord of hosts within. Every person who has walked this path knows the first step is the hardest, believing that you can be, believing that you can possess. Yet once belief is established, the world bends in obedience. Letters arrive, accounts balance, debts are repaid, and abundance flows. Not by effort, not by struggle, but by dwelling in the state of the word fulfilled. You may see lack, you may feel circumstances resist, but do not be moved. The silver and gold are already yours in consciousness, and that is the only reality that counts. From this awareness, all else must follow. Now we turn our attention to the great inner law that governs all creation, the principle that makes wealth, success, and all forms of abundance not a matter of chance, effort, or circumstance, but of consciousness itself. It is this law that underlies the scripture we have just explored, that silent, invincible force which shapes the visible world from the invisible realm. Understand clearly that nothing appears in your life that has not first been conceived in your imagination, assumed in your consciousness, and felt as a reality before it manifests in form. This is the foundation of all true prosperity. The silver and gold that lie outside in the world cannot be grasped until they are first recognized within, for the outer world is always a reflection of the inner state. It is not the market, the economy, the banks, or the circumstances that determine your fortune. It is your assumption, your inner state of being, that commands what is to come. Imagine for a moment a seed lying in the soil. The seed is full of potential, full of promise, yet it will not sprout, will not grow, will not bear fruit until the right conditions awaken it. Sunlight, water, warmth, these are merely the environment. The real life comes from within the seed. The invisible principle of life contained in it is what compels it to rise, to emerge, to bloom. So too is it with your consciousness. Your desire for wealth, for prosperity, for the silver and gold of life is the seed. The circumstances that surround you are merely the soil. Until the inner principle is awakened, until you assume the feeling of possession, nothing will appear in the outer world. It is this awakening, this conscious assumption, that is the law in operation. The unseen always precedes the seen. Consider the man who dreams of acquiring a great sum of money. Each day, he works, he plans, he strategizes, yet he feels anxious, uncertain, and lacking. No matter how diligent he is in external action, his state of consciousness is one of absence, of limitation. The law responds not to his planning, but to his feeling, not to his labor, but to the assumption he carries. His seed lies dormant, for he does not yet know the inner law. Contrast this with the woman who, despite having no means and living in scarcity, closes her eyes each night and imagines herself enjoying wealth, seeing herself receiving letters of prosperity, feeling the weight of coins in her hands. She does not seek, she assumes. She does not labor anxiously, she dwells in the state of fulfillment. And slowly, surely, the outer world begins to obey. Opportunities appear, debts are repaid, offers arrive that seem miraculous, all because the law responds to the inner state she holds. It is often said, actions speak louder than words, but the truth surpasses this common saying. The actions of the body, the outward gestures, are powerless without the assumption within. You may labor tirelessly, yet without the inner belief, without the state of possession, the law does not respond. Conversely, the inner assumption acts invisibly, yet with infinite potency, and the outer world bends to it. It is a quiet, unstoppable force. The inner law does not need recognition, it does not argue, it does not hesitate. It is exact, precise, and immutable. When you assume a state, the universe conspires to bring that state into external reality. Every lottery win, every fortune, every instance of unexpected prosperity begins here, in the theater of the mind, in the consciousness that assumes and knows it already possesses. I would have you reflect on a merchant I once observed. He desired a vast sum that seemed impossible given his humble circumstances. Each evening, he retired to his study and envisioned his business flourishing, imagined the ledgers perfectly balanced, heard the approving voices of his clients, felt the satisfaction of achievement. In the outer world, there was no evidence, no sign, only the persistence of doubt from his friends and the scarcity of his accounts. Yet he persisted in the state of already having. One morning, an unforeseen contract arrived, precisely the one he had imagined, bringing in wealth far beyond expectation. The law had responded to his inner assumption before the world had a chance to appear as proof. This is the inner law at work. The unseen always precedes the seen. The assumed precedes the attained. Every person experiences it, whether consciously or unconsciously. A mother who believes in the success of her child, though the child may struggle, is employing the inner law. She envisions triumph, dwells in confidence, nurtures the feeling of achievement, and gradually, circumstances align. A student who sees himself as competent before any examination, who assumes mastery in the quiet moments before sleep, often finds that the result manifests exactly as imagined. It is not magic, nor is it luck. It is the invincible law of consciousness in operation. Your inner state is the decisive factor in all outcomes. The world without merely reflects the world within. Now consider the words of the Master. As he thinks in his heart, so is he. Here lies the essence of the law. The heart, the seat of feeling, is the generator of reality. Thoughts without feeling are like seeds without moisture. They contain potential, but cannot bring forth life. The assumption must be lived, must be felt, must be real in your consciousness before it can take form. If you desire wealth, you must dwell in the state of wealth. You must feel secure, confident, joyous, generous. You must walk through your inner day as one who is already a possessor of all things. The outer world will follow. There is no exception to this law. No argument, no logic, no act of reason can override it. It is invincible because it operates from the very principle of life itself. I recall the story of a woman in humble circumstances who desired to receive a legacy left by a distant relative. She knew of it, but she had no proof and no expectation that it would come. Every night, she would imagine the letter arriving, feel the joy of its contents, taste the excitement of sudden abundance. Her friends advised caution, but she continued to live in the inner state of receiving. Months later, the letter arrived, the inheritance in full measure. The outer world obeyed what she had assumed long before any evidence appeared. This demonstrates the fundamental truth: you must live in the end, not in the beginning. Assume the state of the wish fulfilled, for that assumption alone has the power to bring it into form. The inner law also operates in subtler ways, in everyday experiences. A man who believes he is fortunate often finds luck following him. a person who believes in kindness and generosity sees opportunities to act and receive in return. The law does not distinguish between small or large desires. It responds to the state of consciousness. If you assume lack, lack manifests. If you assume abundance, abundance must appear. It is not negotiable. You may argue, you may resist, you may doubt, yet the law remains steadfast. It is impartial, exact, and faithful to the assumption that is held. This is why it is crucial to govern your thoughts, your feelings, your inner assumptions with care, for they are the architects of your outer life. Imagine a man walking through the city, imagining himself as poor, worried, and unworthy. Every street, every building, every opportunity confirms his fear, for the world mirrors the state he carries. Contrast him with another man who walks the same streets, yet inwardly is wealthy, confident, and assured. Doors open, invitations appear, opportunities present themselves. The outer forms are identical, yet the inner assumption produces entirely different outcomes. This is the power of the inner law. It does not change, it does not compromise, and it obeys the state you hold without hesitation. You may ask, how does one assume the state convincingly? The answer lies in imagination guided by feeling. Close your eyes and see the scene as though it is real. Hear the letters of confirmation, feel the joy, taste the security of abundance. Act in small ways as one who possesses. Speak with confidence. Move as though wealth, prosperity, and success are already yours. Your imagination is the workshop of creation. Every thought, every feeling, every assumption is a tool with which you shape the outer world. Ignore the appearances, for they are not the law, they are the shadow. The law is your consciousness, and it responds only to what is assumed as real. There are countless examples in daily life, some subtle, some extraordinary. A writer who imagines the success of his book even before publication often finds readers drawn as though by unseen hands. A business person who assumes a prosperous enterprise, visualizes the happy clients, and feels the satisfaction of service, attracts contracts and opportunities that appear miraculous to others. The inner law is impartial, responding to all assumptions, regardless of how impossible they may appear to the senses. It is the silent creator of all reality, the hidden architect of every fortune. Consider also the law in relationships and personal growth. Those who assume confidence, charm, and grace in social interactions often find doors opening, friendships forming, and circumstances aligning to their favor. The law is universal. It governs every aspect of life. Wealth, success, happiness, health, all are subject to the principle that the inner state must precede outer manifestation. This is why you must govern your imagination, your assumptions, and your feelings with diligence. What you assume, you attract. What you dwell upon, you become. It is a law as certain as gravity, as absolute as the sun rising in the east. Even the greatest fortunes in history were born in imagination first. Think of the industrialist who saw an invention before it existed, the author who visualized readers before a book was written, the philanthropist who imagined generosity before wealth flowed. All operated according to the same inner law. The unseen must be assumed before it is seen. This is the law of abundance, the law that governs the silver and gold of the world, the law that turns dreams into reality, thought into form, imagination into experience. Every day, the law is in operation around you, silently, invisibly, responding to every assumption you hold. It does not slumber. It does not rest. It obeys you whether you recognize it or not. To awaken to its operation is to step into mastery over your own life, to command wealth, success, and prosperity as naturally as breathing. To ignore it is to remain subject to circumstance, to see the world as unyielding, to live in limitation and struggle. The choice is yours. The inner law awaits only recognition, only assumption, only the feeling of already possessing. Once that is embraced, the universe must obey. Even in the smallest acts, you may practice the law. Imagine a day in which you are generous, confident, joyous, and prosperous. Enter fully into the feeling of that day as though it is occurring now. The outer world will align, circumstances will shift, opportunities will appear, and your life will begin to transform. This is the principle behind every miracle, every fortune, every unexpected blessing. The law responds to your consciousness and nothing else. Understand also that the law is not limited to material wealth. It governs every desire, health, love, wisdom, peace, happiness. All that you wish for must first be assumed in the invisible, in your consciousness, before it appears outwardly. The silver and gold are but one aspect, one manifestation of the universal principle. Master this principle in one area, and you master it in all. It is the one law, the inner law, unchanging, eternal, and absolute. The moment you accept this truth, a new world unfolds before you. You are no longer a seeker, you are a creator. You no longer wait for fortune, for opportunity, for confirmation. You assume, and the world obeys. Letters arrive, debts are cancelled, doors open, strangers offer assistance, circumstances bend. The outer world cannot resist the state you hold within. This is the secret of all prosperity. Assumption creates reality. Feeling gives it life. Consciousness brings it forth. The inner law is your ally, your instrument, your authority. You may look back and see the many times it has operated in your life unconsciously. The moments when you felt confident, joyful, assured, and suddenly the world conformed. These are proof that the law always responds, whether you recognize it or not. Imagine then the power of conscious application. Every night as you retire, dwell in the state of having already received. Every moment let your thoughts, words, and feelings align with that state. Persist in it, and the universe, exact and faithful, will obey. This is the great inner law, the principle that underlies the silver and gold, the riches of life, and every desire you hold. It is not complex, it is not mystical in the sense of distant magic. It is simply a law of consciousness. What you assume as real, what you feel as true, must manifest. The unseen always precedes the seen. The inner state is the generator. The outer world is the effect. This law, once understood, once embraced, frees you from limitation, from doubt, from fear. It grants you mastery over circumstances, over fortune, over the material world. For the source of all creation resides within you, in the I am, the invisible principle that declares, the silver is mine and the gold is mine. Close your eyes for a moment and consider the power of imagination, the silent architect of reality, the unseen workshop where all creation takes form before it appears in the world of senses. Imagination is not mere fancy, nor is it a diversion for idle minds. It is the sacred chamber within which the future is crafted, where the silver and gold, the riches of life, the very desires of your heart are first shaped, felt, and lived. You must understand that the outer world is always the effect of this inner process. Before wealth manifests, before success takes tangible form, it exists in the theater of your imagination. It is there, alive, pulsating with possibility, awaiting recognition, awaiting your deliberate attention. This is the place where miracles are born, where letters of confirmation, unexpected inheritance, prosperous ventures, and abundance of every kind are first entertained as real. Imagine a quiet room, a chamber within your mind, where you may enter at will. Within this room, every desire you hold may be experienced as already fulfilled. You may see the gold coins lying before you, feel their weight in your hands, hear the soft clinking of silver, smell the richness of currency that symbolizes not merely material wealth, but freedom, security, and divine permission to enjoy life. Do not think of this as illusion. To the senses it may appear unreal, but to the law it is the only reality that matters. The world outside will respond only to what has been felt, assumed, and accepted in this inner chamber. The imagination, guided by feeling, is the creative force. It is the invisible principle that moves all forms into being. Consider the man who dreams of winning a great fortune. Each night, he enters his inner room and imagines himself receiving the prize. He does not ask, he does not hope, He assumes the feeling of already having. He sees himself holding the ticket, opening the envelope, reading the numbers that confirm his gain. He feels the surge of joy, the weight of coins, the peace of security. This is no idle daydream. It is a rehearsal in the invisible, a performance in the theater of the mind where reality is rehearsed before it is enacted. The outer world is powerless to resist this inner conviction. Letters arrive, opportunities present themselves, and the fortune manifests because the vision was real in consciousness long before it became tangible. I recall a story of a young woman who desired a substantial increase in her income, though she had no evidence that it could come. Each night, she closed her eyes and imagined herself receiving a notice of payment, holding the check, feeling the security and freedom it brought. She imagined herself walking down the streets with ease, knowing she lacked nothing. Months later, an unexpected promotion and a financial gift arrived simultaneously, manifesting precisely the scenario she had lived each night in imagination. This demonstrates the invincible principle. When you live the scene of your desire as though it is real, the outer world must conform. The imagination is not child's play, it is the workshop of creation, the sacred chamber where your wish is first entertained. To engage this power, you must employ all your senses in the inner vision. See the objects, hear the voices, feel the textures, taste the experience, and breathe the atmosphere of fulfillment. A man who imagines wealth should not merely see coins, he should feel their weight, hear the clinking, sense the excitement of receiving them, and experience the security of abundance as though it is occurring now. A woman who desires the return of a lost opportunity should see the letter, hear the tone of approval, feel the joy in her heart, and know with every fiber of being that it has already happened. In this, imagination becomes irresistible. The law recognizes the inner reality, and the outer world bends to its authority. There is a subtlety to this principle that many overlook. It is not enough to imagine casually or intermittently. The vision must be sustained, vivid, and imbued with feeling. A fleeting thought will not move the universe. A brief hope or wish is powerless. You must live in the experience, enter the scene as if you are already participating in it, and remain there long enough for the law to recognize it. The silver and gold, the riches, the opportunities, all respond to the state of consciousness, not to mere desire. It is the difference between wishing and assuming, between hoping and knowing, between fantasy and creation. Think of the child who imagines playing with a toy. The child does not doubt, does not question, does not negotiate with reality. The child imagines, and the experience feels real in every fiber of being. That is the manner in which you must enter your vision. No doubt, no reasoning, no analysis. Only feeling, only experience, only assumption. In this state, the law cannot refuse you. The imagined scene, if lived as real, becomes the seed of outer manifestation. The unseen always precedes the seen. The inner vision is the precursor to every event, the blueprint of every fortune. A merchant I once observed desired a substantial expansion of his enterprise. In the visible world, there were obstacles, debts, and limited resources. Yet each evening, he imagined his business flourishing, customers arriving with satisfaction, ledgers overflowing with profit, letters confirming contracts he had not yet received. He felt the joy, the confidence, the assurance of accomplishment. Within months, contracts appeared, debts were cleared, opportunities arose that seemed miraculous, and the business grew beyond expectation. The inner vision had been entertained first, the outer reality followed in exact obedience. This is the principle at work. Imagination, guided by feeling, is the law of creation itself. Even in matters that seem trivial, imagination wields immense power. A student who imagines understanding the lessons, mastering the subject, and experiencing the joy of success will perform differently than one who frets, doubts, or worries. A man who imagines kindness and generosity will attract reciprocity and goodwill. A woman who envisions health and vitality will find the body responding. The law is universal, impartial, and exact. It is not influenced by external conditions, by skepticism, or by resistance. What is assumed and felt in the inner chamber becomes real in the outer world. The vision in imagination is the decisive factor. It is important to distinguish between mere daydreaming and deliberate visioning. Daydreams are fleeting, inconsistent, and often accompanied by doubt. They lack the full engagement of the senses and the feeling of reality. Deliberate visioning, on the other hand, is a conscious act. You close your eyes, enter your inner chamber, and construct a scene as though it is happening now. You breathe it, feel it, see it, hear it, and live it fully. In this act, you are no longer hoping for a future event, you are rehearsing it in consciousness, making it inevitable. The law recognizes this rehearsal and brings it into manifestation. There is a story of a man who desired to acquire a property that seemed unattainable. Every night, he sat quietly, imagining walking through the rooms, feeling the textures, smelling the air, hearing the sounds of life within it. He experienced the joy of ownership as though it were happening at that very moment. Weeks later, a series of circumstances aligned. The property became available. Terms favorable to him were offered, and he received the keys to the home he had already possessed in imagination. This is no accident. It is the operation of the law through deliberate vision. The imagined scene, when felt and assumed as real, commands the outer world to obey. Notice that the law does not recognize time. It does not consider past or future, delay or doubt. The vision in imagination exists now, and the law responds to what is now assumed. To imagine wealth, to feel security, to experience joy is to create reality in the present. The outer world may lag, but the law moves silently, aligning circumstances, arranging events, preparing the unseen for its revelation. Your task is to dwell in the inner state, to experience the scene fully, and to know that the outcome is inevitable. The silver and gold, the prosperity, the fulfillment of your desire are already present in consciousness. Even letters, messages, opportunities, and financial blessings obey this inner vision. A man may imagine receiving confirmation of a payment, a contract, or a gift, and the law will orchestrate circumstances for its arrival. A woman may imagine her income increasing, a promotion, a windfall, and the outer world will respond in obedience. The imagination, guided by feeling, is the invisible hand of creation, shaping the world according to the state you hold. Nothing resists the assumption that is lived and felt. A subtle point to understand is that the imagination must be combined with emotional conviction. Intellectual recognition alone is insufficient. Thinking, reasoning, or planning cannot create reality. You may know the principle, understand it theoretically, and yet achieve nothing if you do not feel it. Feeling is the currency of creation. When you see the letter, hold the coin, feel the joy, experience the security, the law accepts it as real. The outer world then manifests the inner reality. This is why so many fail. They attempt with the mind but neglect the heart. The vision must be full-bodied, imbued with the feeling of truth. Consider also the effect of repetition. A single vision may initiate the process, but repeated assumption deepens the reality within consciousness. Night after night, imagine the letter arriving, the check in hand, the confirmation of prosperity. Each time the scene becomes more real, more vivid, more undeniable. Your consciousness, trained in this practice, accepts it as reality. The outer world must respond in kind. This is the method by which wealth, success, and all desires are brought into manifestation. Even in ordinary life, this principle operates. Think of a person who imagines good health, a successful conversation, a satisfying encounter. They approach the day with expectation, with confidence, with the inner experience of fulfillment. Circumstances bend, events align, and outcomes match the assumed reality. The imagination is the invisible studio of creation, and feeling is the artist's hand. Whatever you imagine and feel as real, the outer world must eventually yield. Now reflect on the phrase, "The silver and gold are yours." To possess it, you must first see it, feel it, and experience it within your inner chamber. Letters confirming abundance, checks arriving, contracts signed, opportunities opening, all follow the inner vision. To neglect this process is to remain at the mercy of appearances, waiting for circumstances to dictate your fortune. To employ it consciously is to command the universe, to orchestrate events, and to create the reality you desire. The law of imagination, guided by feeling, is exact, faithful, and unstoppable. Even the greatest fortunes, the most remarkable successes begin here. An inventor imagines the machine before it exists. A writer imagines the readers before the book is written. A philanthropist imagines the giving before wealth appears. All begin in the inner chamber. All take form in imagination. All are brought forth through assumption. The law is universal, impartial, and inevitable. Whatever you entertain as real, whatever you feel as present, will manifest. The vision in imagination is the precursor to all experiences, the doorway through which the silver and gold of life flow to you. You may now see the importance of cultivating this inner power. Each night, enter your inner chamber. Construct the scene of your desire as though it is already real. Live it fully, breathe it, feel it, and assume it as truth. Repeat, sustain, and dwell in it, and the universe will respond with absolute fidelity. Letters arrive, opportunities appear, doors open, circumstances shift, all in alignment with the inner vision. This is the law, the principle that governs all wealth, all prosperity, all fulfillment. The silver and gold are drawn to the consciousness that assumes and feels their presence. Imagination is the unseen forge, the sacred workshop of creation, and feeling is the flame that brings all things into life. Consider carefully the principle that the state precedes the fact that the outer world is always but a reflection of the inner reality. Nothing can appear in your life until the consciousness has first assumed it as real. This is the law that governs all manifestation, that makes the impossible inevitable, and that explains every miracle, every unexpected fortune, and every instance of abundance. The man who waits for circumstances to align, who searches for proof before he assumes, is laboring in vain. The fact that you see is never the initiator, it is the result of a state, a consciousness that has gone before. Reflect on a young woman who desired a financial windfall, though her life offered no outward evidence of provision. She might have waited, perhaps prayed, perhaps hoped, yet without the inner state, her prayers would have been empty words. Instead, she entered nightly into a silent room within, imagined herself holding the sum she longed for, felt the security and relief in every nerve, tasted the freedom and joy as though it were now hers. In this inner state, she lived as though the fact had already occurred. One afternoon, entirely unexpectedly, a debt long owed was repaid, bringing her exactly the sum she had imagined. The outer fact followed the state she had assumed. The universe cannot resist the state of consciousness. It obeys it as faithfully as it obeys gravity. It is vital to recognize that you do not create reality by laboring in the visible world. The man who struggles endlessly, seeking proof of opportunity, is seeking backwards. The fact cannot precede the state. Effort, planning, and external exertion have their place, but they are powerless unless guided by the inner assumption. The invisible state is the seed, the visible result is the harvest. To dwell in lack is to receive lack, to dwell in abundance is to command abundance. The world outside merely obeys what is already impressed upon the inner consciousness. Think of the stories of individuals who suddenly received unexpected riches or who found opportunities that seemed miraculous. How often were they told, "It is impossible"? How often were the circumstances utterly unfavorable? Yet they had already entered the inner state of having, of fulfillment, of satisfaction. The outer world, like a faithful servant, brought forth what had been lived internally. This is the law in operation. The state precedes the fact always and unfailingly. There is a subtlety to understand. The state is not merely a thought, nor is it an idle daydream. It is an immersive condition of being, a living assumption, a reality that your consciousness accepts as now. The man who assumes wealth must not simply say, "I wish for wealth." He must live, breathe, and feel as one who possesses it. He must imagine paying his bills with ease, receiving letters of confirmation, seeing his accounts abundant, and feeling gratitude and satisfaction. Until this inner state is assumed, the outer fact cannot appear. Consider a man of business whose enterprise lagged despite his tireless effort. Each day he labored, attended meetings, and negotiated contracts, yet results remained scarce. Recognizing the principle, he began to assume the state of already being a successful entrepreneur. He imagined customers praising his service, letters confirming orders, ledgers full, and the satisfaction of accomplishment. In time, contracts arrived, customers multiplied, and profits increased beyond expectation. The outer world was compelled to mirror the state he held first within. The fact had to follow the state because the law is unyielding, precise, and faithful. This law explains the seeming miracles in everyday life. The man who imagines health and vitality, who feels the body strong, the mind clear, the energy abundant, finds the body responding in accordance. The woman who assumes love, friendship, and approval experiences the outer world as full of warmth and connection. The student who imagines mastery of a subject finds comprehension and understanding flowing effortlessly. In each case, the fact is produced by the state first assumed. The law does not bargain, does not consider time, does not falter. It obeys the consciousness that assumes. Reflect on the story of a humble clerk who longed for financial independence. Outwardly, there was no possibility, no evidence that his wish could be fulfilled. Each night, he closed his eyes and imagined himself free, experiencing the comfort of provision, seeing his bank account full, feeling the gratitude and peace of security. By the law, the universe conspired in his favor. Unexpectedly, a debt owed him for years was repaid, offering him exactly the sum he had imagined. The fact followed the state, the outer world obeyed the inner law. The law operates through feeling, not thought. Intellectual understanding alone does not create the state. A man may comprehend the principle perfectly and yet achieve nothing, for the mind without feeling is powerless. To live in the state of having is to feel it with every fiber of being. You must experience the satisfaction, the joy, the certainty, as if it is present now. The outer world, like a reflection, cannot help but obey. This is why countless desires manifest seemingly overnight. The inner state has prepared the outer reality, and the law faithfully brings it forth. Even in mundane matters, the principle applies. The man who assumes success in a meeting, imagining the conversation flowing, the outcomes favorable, the appreciation of colleagues, finds the meeting unfolding as imagined. The woman who assumes harmony in a household experiences cooperation and peace regardless of prior tension. The outer facts conform because the state has gone before. This is the fundamental rule: first the state, second the fact. Reverse the order and struggle and disappointment follow. There is a story of a young man who desired to secure a loan for a business venture. He could see no way, no evidence that it could be approved. Yet he sat quietly each evening, imagining the signature of approval, hearing the words of the lender confirming, feeling the weight of security and provision. He entered the day with unwavering confidence that the loan was his. Within days, entirely unexpectedly, the approval arrived exactly as imagined. The state preceded the fact, and the outer world conformed. The law is immutable. It responds to consciousness, never to circumstance. Notice the difference between wishing and assuming. Wishing looks to the future and waits for evidence. Assuming, on the other hand, acts as though the desire is fulfilled now. The man who wishes waits, hopes, doubts. The man who assumes enters the inner state, experiences it fully, and allows the universe to align. The outer world then obeys, Every lottery won, every unexpected inheritance, every opportunity that seems to arrive by chance is in reality the manifestation of a consciousness that assumed the state before the fact appeared. This is the law, precise, impartial, and unerring. Consider also the subtle effect of imagination on relationships and health. Those who assume love, harmony, and understanding in their interactions find these qualities manifesting around them. Those who assume vitality, strength, and wellness experience their bodies responding. The law does not differentiate between material wealth and every other desire. It obeys the state assumed, whether of abundance, health, or peace. This is why so many fail in life. They assume limitation, scarcity, illness, or disappointment, and the outer world as a mirror confirms their inner state. The secret, then, is to dwell in the state of the wish fulfilled. Do not look to evidence. Do not seek confirmation. Enter nightly into your inner chamber and experience the fulfillment fully. See the letters, feel the coins, imagine the words spoken, taste the joy, hear the confirmation. Allow the feeling of reality to permeate every nerve. When this is done, the law will move the outer world to reflect the state you have assumed. This is the creative principle, the law that governs all wealth, success, and fulfillment. There is a parable of a man who longed for financial freedom. He had no prospects, no indication of provision, yet each night he imagined himself free, living securely, feeling joy and gratitude for abundance. Months later, he received a series of unexpected payments, contracts, and opportunities that precisely matched the state he had assumed. The fact followed the state because the law is absolute. What is assumed in consciousness becomes reality in form. The outer world must obey. Even in the smallest matters, this law is evident. A student who imagines mastery finds comprehension flowing. A teacher who assumes patience and understanding experiences cooperation. A person who assumes good health experiences vitality. The state governs all. The outer world is powerless to resist. Every circumstance, every person, every event reflects the inner condition. To dwell in the state of having is to command the universe. To doubt, to hope, to wait is to remain subject to limitation. The law does not recognize time. It is eternal, exact, and faithful. The man who assumes wealth, the woman who imagines provision, the student who feels mastery, all operate in the eternal now. The law responds to the present assumption, not to future plans or past history. This is why sudden riches, unexpected opportunities, and miraculous provision appear to some and not to others. Those who assume the state receive, those who wait for the fact remain empty. Consider a young woman who desired promotion, though her record showed no precedence. Each night, she entered the inner chamber and imagined herself in the new role, hearing praise from her superiors, feeling the responsibility and joy, seeing herself walking with confidence. Within weeks, circumstances aligned. She was offered the position she had lived in imagination. The fact had to follow the state. The universe obeyed her consciousness. This is the law, invincible and exact. Even letters, checks, and notices obey the state. The person who imagines receiving confirmation, payment, or opportunity finds the outer world producing it exactly. It is not coincidence, it is the law. The state must come first. All external evidence is powerless without it. All preparation in the visible world is ineffective unless guided by the inner state. To dwell in the state of fulfillment is to command the silver and gold, the riches, and every blessing that life offers. The principle also explains the miraculous in health, relationships, and personal growth. Those who assume vitality find it. Those who assume love, harmony, or understanding find it manifest. Those who assume success and competence find results beyond expectation. The state always precedes the fact, for the law is faithful, impartial, and exact. All manifestation, all abundance, all fulfillment flows from this inner assumption. Every day you may practice this. Close your eyes, enter your inner chamber, imagine the wish fulfilled. Live it fully. Breathe it, feel it, hear it, see it. Allow the outer world to obey. persist, repeat, and dwell in the state. Letters arrive, opportunities appear, debts are cancelled, contracts fulfilled. The law responds to consciousness, never to circumstance. To master this is to command the universe to manifest the silver and gold, the riches of life, with effortless fidelity. Faith is not a casual hope, nor a mere wish whispered into the silence of night. It is the living, unshakable conviction that the desired outcome already exists, that the silver and gold, the abundance you seek, is not somewhere in the distant future but present now, waiting to be recognized and embraced. Faith is the silent, invisible bridge between imagination and manifestation, between the unseen state and the visible fact. It is the currency by which the law operates, the key that unlocks the treasure hidden within your own consciousness. To act in faith is to enter a state of certainty so profound that doubt cannot exist. Consider the example of a man who longed financial freedom, though every external sign suggested scarcity. In the beginning, he was uncertain, and the outer world reflected that hesitation. But when he learned to act in faith, to assume inwardly the reality of his desire, everything began to change. Each day he conducted himself as one who already possessed abundance. He felt the joy, the relief, the satisfaction as though the letter had already arrived, the check already held in his hands, the contract already signed. And in time, the outer world conformed, as it always must, to the inner state. Faith is not a hope deferred, it is a certainty acting in the unseen. It is crucial to understand that the act of faith is independent of evidence. You may observe bills unpaid, opportunities delayed, circumstances seemingly hostile, and yet faith requires no visible confirmation. To act in faith is to disregard the appearances, to maintain unwavering belief in the reality of the inner assumption. This is why so many fail to receive the blessings they desire. They wait for the evidence to appear before they act, and in doing so, they reverse the law. The evidence is never first, it is always the follower of the inner state. Faith is the instrument that maintains the state, holding it constant until the outer world manifests it. Imagine a woman who seeks a sudden increase in income, though she sees no means by which it can arrive. Each evening she sits quietly, closing her eyes, imagining herself receiving the payment, feeling the security and relief as though it is hers now. She maintains this state during the day, ignoring any outer evidence to the contrary. In time, a series of unexpected events produces exactly the circumstances she imagined. Faith has acted. By acting as though her desire is fulfilled, she compels the unseen to conform to her consciousness. The universe cannot resist faith that is unwavering and lived. Faith is strengthened through persistence. A single moment of belief may spark the process, but sustained faith deepens the state within consciousness. The man who acts in faith daily, who maintains the inner experience, who lives and breathes the reality he desires, becomes a living magnet for the circumstances that correspond to that state. Consider a small merchant who struggled to pay his debts. Each evening he imagined his accounts abundant, customers praising his service, letters confirming orders. Each day he conducted himself as though prosperity had already arrived, acting with confidence and generosity. Over time, the accounts overflowed, debts were cleared, and opportunities multiplied. Faith had acted as the invisible conductor, guiding the outer world to reflect the inner reality. The act of faith is inseparable from feeling. Intellectual assent is insufficient. To merely understand the principle of assumption without feeling the reality of your wish fulfilled is to labor without power. Faith requires emotional conviction, the inner experience of fulfillment. You must feel the relief, the joy, the security, the satisfaction of having what you desire. Only then does the law recognize your assumption as real. The letters, the checks, the confirmations, the opportunities, all obey the inner state, but the state must be felt as present, lived as actual, and sustained with consistency. There is a story of a young man who desired to secure a position long denied him. Outwardly, there was no sign, no opportunity, no apparent path. Yet he sat quietly each evening, imagining the meeting, hearing the words of approval, feeling the joy and confidence of success. During the day, he acted with the assurance of the fulfilled state, ignoring appearances, maintaining the inner experience of accomplishment. Within weeks, the position was offered to him exactly as imagined. Faith had acted invisibly, compelling the outer world to obey the inner conviction. The state must be held, the feeling maintained, until manifestation occurs. Faith also requires courage. To act in faith is to persist when all evidence suggests otherwise. It is to stand firm in the unseen, to maintain the assumption against the currents of doubt, delay, and opposition. The outer world may seem contrary, the circumstances may resist, but the law is faithful to consciousness. The man who refuses to let appearances dictate his inner state, who continues to act as though the desired reality is present, finds that the universe bends and shifts in obedience. This is why the act of faith is often described as miraculous. It operates beyond the logic of the senses, yet it is the most natural of laws, ever present, precise, and reliable. Consider the story of a widow who desired to pay off a long-standing debt. Outwardly, there was no means, no hint of provision. Yet she maintained faith, imagining herself at peace, imagining the letter of repayment arriving, imagining the joy of relief and freedom. She felt the satisfaction fully, holding it against all evidence. In time, the debt was settled unexpectedly, circumstances aligned perfectly, and she experienced exactly the outcome she had assumed. This is the power of acting in faith. It aligns unseen forces, orchestrates events, and compels the outer world to conform to the inner state. The act of faith is not passive, it requires active mental engagement. You must deliberately enter your inner chamber each day, imagine the scene of fulfillment, and live it with all your senses. This is no idle reverie. It is a conscious act of creation. The letters, checks, confirmations, and opportunities are drawn to you not by chance, but by the consistent, deliberate action of consciousness operating in faith. It is the most potent form of discipline, the most reliable method of securing abundance. Faith is also demonstrated in daily decisions. The man who assumes wealth acts as a wealthy man, even before the outer evidence appears. He makes decisions, extends generosity, negotiates contracts, and conducts himself with the assurance of the fulfilled state. The woman who assumes security invests, organizes, and moves through life with confidence, as if her desire is already accomplished. Every choice, every action, every thought must reflect the inner assumption. This alignment of consciousness and action is faith in operation. There is a story of a man who sought reconciliation with a long-lost friend. Outwardly, there seemed no hope. Yet he imagined the conversation, felt the warmth of forgiveness, heard the words of acceptance, and maintained this inner state as real. Within a short time, the friend reached out, the reconciliation occurred, and the outer reality perfectly matched the inner assumption. Faith is not blind hope, it is the active, deliberate insistence that the desired reality exists, and the unseen is compelled to conform. Even in matters of health, the act of faith is paramount. A man who imagines vitality, strength, and energy must maintain the inner state against the evidence of fatigue or illness. He imagines the body responding perfectly, feels the energy flowing, experiences strength as real, and persists in this assumption. The outer body will eventually reflect the state held in consciousness. The law is impartial, operating on faith, feeling, and assumption alone. What is lived within must appear without. Persistence is essential. One cannot act in faith once and abandon it when doubt appears. Every evening, every moment of quiet reflection, every deliberate assumption strengthens the inner state. Letters, checks, confirmations, and opportunities arrive not because of the outer world, but because the inner state has been fortified through repetition and conviction. Faith acts invisibly, imperceptibly, yet with absolute precision. It is the conductor orchestrating the symphony of manifestation, the unseen hand that brings the silver and gold to those who assume it is theirs. Consider also the role of imagination in supporting faith. To act in faith, you must vividly imagine the desired outcome as already present. You must see the letters, hear the words of confirmation, feel the joy of relief and abundance. Imagination brings the inner state to life, making it real to consciousness. Faith and imagination together form the foundation of creation day. Imagination constructs the scene, and faith holds it as reality until the outer world responds. This combination is irresistible, absolute, and invincible. Even when circumstances appear contrary, the act of faith prevails. A man may experience setbacks, delays, or disappointment, yet if he maintains the inner state of fulfillment, the outer world will eventually conform. The universe is impartial. It obeys consciousness, not appearances. The act of faith, sustained through feeling and imagination, compels events, circumstances, and people to align with the state assumed. Letters, checks, confirmations, opportunities, these follow inevitably when faith is constant. There is a story of a merchant whose business faced apparent ruin. Each day, he imagined success, saw customers praising his service, felt the joy of abundance, and maintained this state despite outward loss. Within weeks, circumstances shifted unexpectedly, contracts arrived, debts were paid, and prosperity returned. The act of faith had held the state unseen yet powerful until the outer facts obeyed. This is the law. The inner state, maintained by faith, is the irresistible agent of manifestation. Faith is a discipline. It requires consistency, focus, and refusal to be swayed by appearances. You must daily enter the inner chamber, imagine the fulfillment, feel it fully, and act as though it is present. The outer world will conform. The letters, checks, confirmations, opportunities, and all forms of abundance will arrive. The law is precise, impartial, and faithful. To master faith is to command reality, to draw the silver and gold, the riches, and all desires effortlessly. Even the smallest act of faith produces results. The student who assumes understanding, the worker who assumes competence, the person who assumes health, all find that their outer world matches their inner assumption. The law is universal. It requires no external proof, no evidence, no manipulation. What is assumed and felt in consciousness is irresistible to the universe. The act of faith is the unbroken bridge between desire and manifestation, imagination and reality, the unseen and the seen. Persistence, feeling, imagination, and courage form the pillars of faith. Each night, enter your inner chamber. See the letters, hear the words of confirmation, feel the coins, taste the abundance, live the joy. Each day, act as one who possesses, as one whose desire is already fulfilled. Ignore appearances. The outer world must obey. Faith is the invisible conductor, the unseen law, and the absolute power that moves circumstances to match consciousness. Every unexpected payment, every opportunity, every letter, every check, every blessing flows to the one who acts in faith. Tonight, as you prepare to rest, let me guide you into a sacred exercise, a meditative act that will anchor all that you have learned and bring it into immediate effect. The silver and gold, the riches, the abundance you have longed for are not distant, nor are they waiting for some unpredictable event. They are present now within the sanctuary of your own consciousness. It is here, in the quiet hours of evening, when the world outside has fallen silent, that you may enter the mystical chamber of your imagination and experience your desires as already fulfilled. This is not suggestion. It is not a mere thought. It is an awakening to the truth that the I Am, the consciousness within, is the source of all reality, and what is assumed in this presence must inevitably appear. Close your eyes and feel the stillness surrounding you. Breathe deeply, letting the rhythm of your life settle into a calm, receptive state. Know that you are now entering a realm where time and space do not impose limits, where the laws of men are replaced by the divine law of consciousness. Imagine, with every detail, the reality you desire. If it is wealth, see the letters arriving, feel the coins and notes, hear the words of confirmation, and taste the joy of relief and freedom. Let your imagination move unbound by doubt, unrestrained by circumstance. The scene must be lived as if it is present now, as if it is not something to await, but something to inhabit. There is power in repetition. Each night, each evening, enter this chamber and imagine the scene of your desire with fresh clarity. The law responds to the vividness of your feeling, to the intensity of your belief, and to the consistency with which you dwell in the state of the wish fulfilled. A man once desired financial freedom, though all outward appearances suggested delay. Each night he entered this inner chamber, imagined the letter confirming his fortune, felt the satisfaction in every fiber of his being, and slept with the sense that it was real. Days later, unexpected provision arrived. The law had responded to the state he assumed, not to evidence, not to reasoning, but to the conviction of consciousness fully realized. Faith is inseparable from this mystical exercise. To dwell in the scene as real requires courage, persistence, and an unyielding refusal to allow outer appearances to dictate your experience. You may be surrounded by debt, scarcity, or opposition, yet in this inner chamber, you are free. You are rich, secure, fulfilled. The letters, the coins, the confirmations, and the opportunities follow inevitably, for the universe cannot resist the law of consciousness fully assumed. This is the great secret. The outer world is compelled by the inner experience. What is experienced now as real must manifest. Imagine a woman seeking sudden provision for her household. Each night she visualizes a check arriving, imagines the joy of her family, hears words of confirmation, feels relief and abundance. She repeats this nightly, entering the mystical chamber with intention and feeling. In time, the outer world brings the reality to her door. The law is unbroken. It obeys the consciousness, not the appearances. This is the divine law, honoring, precise, and faithful. Letters and checks, opportunities and blessings follow the inner scene, for the law responds only to what is assumed as real. Even small details matter. The scene must be precise, full-bodied, and alive with sensation. Imagine the sound of the envelope being opened, the weight of the coins in your hand, the words spoken in congratulations, the emotion that floods your being. Every sense contributes to the reality. Every feeling anchors the state within consciousness. The outer world has no choice but to obey, for it mirrors the inner assumption with exact fidelity. To neglect the fullness of feeling is to weaken the law's effect. Immerse yourself completely, and the manifestation is inevitable. Consider the story of a young man who longed for a promotion long denied. Outwardly, no opportunity existed, and circumstances appeared discouraging. Yet he entered each night into the inner chamber, imagined himself called to the new role, felt the satisfaction and pride, heard words of approval, and experienced the joy of accomplishment. Days later, the promotion was offered, perfectly aligning with the scene he had assumed as real. The mystical exercise of living the desired state, undisturbed by external evidence, had compelled the outer world to obey. The principle extends beyond material abundance to all aspects of life. The person who desires harmony in relationships, health in body, or clarity in mind must enter the inner chamber and live the experience fully. Imagine the conversation of reconciliation, feel the ease of perfect health, hear the affirming words of understanding, and dwell in that state as if it is present now. The outer world cannot resist. Letters of confirmation, opportunities, and tangible outcomes are drawn irresistibly to the consciousness that holds them as real. This is the mystical law. The unseen obeys the felt reality. The I am within governs all phenomena, and the imagination is the sacred workshop where life is forged. Persistence amplifies the effect. Each night's meditation strengthens the inner assumption, consolidates faith, and intensifies the feeling of reality. The law is not rushed, nor is it arbitrary. The unseen moves in perfect rhythm, guided by the frequency of consciousness. A single session may initiate the process, but sustained attention, vivid imagination, and heartfelt assumption accelerate manifestation. A man or woman who enters this mystical chamber nightly becomes a living magnet for the circumstances, letters, and confirmations that correspond to their inner state. The law obeys the inner experience without hesitation. Let us examine the practical steps of this mystical exercise. First, find a quiet place free from distraction. Second, close your eyes and release the tension of the day. Third, imagine the desired scene with all the senses engaged. Fourth, feel the reality as though the letters have arrived, the check is in hand, the provision is present. Fifth, repeat nightly, entering the inner chamber with intention, and carry the inner state into waking life with quiet assurance. The outer world will follow. Opportunities, letters, confirmations, and abundance are drawn irresistibly to the consciousness that assumes fulfillment. There is a subtlety to this practice that many overlook. The scene must be lived as now, not as a distant hope or conditional outcome. It is not enough to say, "I hope it comes." You must assume, with every nerve and sense, that it is already present. This is the mystical truth that governs all creation. What is assumed as real must manifest. A woman who imagines the arrival of a check, feels the relief, hears the confirming words, and experiences the joy fully, finds that the outer world conforms. The law does not bargain with doubt. It obeys the state assumed in consciousness. Consider also the effect of gratitude. While dwelling in the inner chamber, express silent gratitude for the letters, checks, confirmations, and abundance you are experiencing. Gratitude is a powerful amplifier, reinforcing the state within consciousness, aligning the frequency of your being with the reality you desire. A man who expresses gratitude nightly for the financial provision he imagines finds the outer world responding more swiftly and harmoniously. The law is precise. The feeling of reality, reinforced by gratitude, cannot be resisted by the unseen. Even the mundane aspects of life are affected. A student who imagines understanding, feels the clarity, hears affirming words, and dwells in the state of mastery, finds comprehension flowing effortlessly. A worker who imagines efficiency, hears praise, feels confidence, and assumes success, finds circumstances aligning with ease. Every desired outcome, large or small, responds to the inner state, to the mystical assumption, and to the act of living the wish fulfilled before it appears. The letters, checks, confirmations, and opportunities are drawn irresistibly to consciousness aligned with fulfillment. There is a story of a merchant who faced unexpected loss. Each evening he entered the inner chamber, imagined his business restored, felt the satisfaction of abundance, heard words of approval, and dwelt in the state of financial security. Despite appearances, provision returned, clients confirmed contracts, debts were cancelled, and profits multiplied. The mystical exercise of assuming fulfillment, of living the desired state, had compelled the unseen to manifest. This illustrates the immutable principle. The inner state governs the outer fact. Faith, imagination, feeling, and repetition converge in this mystical exercise. Each night, as you enter the inner chamber, allow your senses to bring the scene to life. Hear the letters, feel the coins, experience the joy, imagine the opportunities, taste the satisfaction, and dwell as though it is present now. The outer world has no choice but to mirror the inner reality. The law is impartial, precise, and unwavering. Letters arrive, checks appear, confirmations come, and abundance flows naturally to those who assume the inner state fully. Persistence and courage are essential. You may face doubt, delay, or opposition, yet the mystical chamber of imagination is untouched by circumstance. Enter it nightly, assume the state, feel the reality, and trust the law. The letters, checks, confirmations, and abundance you seek will appear, for the universe cannot resist a consciousness fully aligned with fulfillment. This is the secret of effortless manifestation, the I am within, the law of assumption, the power of imagination, and the act of living the wish fulfilled. Even the smallest practice matters. One may begin with a simple scene: the arrival of a letter, the confirmation of payment, the notice of opportunity. Enter the scene fully, imagine every detail, feel it as real, repeat nightly, and allow the unseen to act. The outer world will conform. The law does not fail. What is assumed as real, lived as present, and sustained in feeling becomes inevitable. Letters, checks, confirmations, and abundance follow without effort, for the universe responds to consciousness, not appearances. Now, as you lie down to rest, make this mystical exercise a nightly habit. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and enter the inner chamber. Imagine the letters, feel the coins, hear the confirming words, taste the joy, and live the state fully. Persist, repeat, and dwell in the scene as now. The outer world will obey. The silver and gold, the letters, checks, confirmations, and opportunities are yours. They follow the consciousness that assumes, feels, and lives the fulfillment. The law is precise, impartial, and invincible. Your imagination, guided by faith and feeling, is the key. Now, having walked together through the inner chambers of imagination, through the law that governs all manifestation, through the act of faith, and the mystical exercise of assumption, let us approach the culmination of this sacred teaching. The letters, the checks, the confirmations, the abundance you desire, these are but expressions of the consciousness that you carry within. They are not rewards for labor, nor favors granted by circumstance, nor the result of external negotiation. They are the natural consequence of a state assumed and sustained. Tonight, I wish to guide you into a profound realization that you are, at this very moment, the owner of all that you desire. The fact must follow the state. There is no exception, no delay that the law itself does not honor when consciousness is aligned. Consider for a moment the nature of reality itself. You perceive the world through your senses, yet the outer world is but a reflection of your inner state. The letters, checks, confirmations, and abundance appear according to the life you live in imagination. It is not the outer circumstances that shape your reality. It is the consciousness within that molds all experience. This is the mystery, the mystical law that governs all manifestation. The outer world cannot resist the inner assumption. Every event, every encounter, every unexpected provision follows the consciousness that assumes fulfillment. A man once despaired of debt, believing circumstance to be his master. Each day he confronted unpaid bills and delayed opportunities, feeling powerless in the face of evidence. But when he learned to dwell in the inner state, to imagine the letters of confirmation, the checks arriving, and the relief of provision, a transformation occurred. Night after night, he lived the reality as fulfilled, acted in faith, and entered the mystical chamber with vivid imagination. Slowly, as if the universe could no longer withhold obedience, his circumstances shifted. Letters arrived, payments were made, opportunities appeared. The outer world conformed to the state assumed because the law cannot resist consciousness fully aligned with fulfillment. This is the reason the law is often called miraculous. It is not a miracle in the sense of violation of order. It is the precise operation of the eternal law of consciousness. The letters, checks, confirmations, and abundance flow naturally to those who act as though their desire is already fulfilled. The unseen cannot resist a consciousness that insists upon reality, that embodies the feeling of possession, and that refuses to be swayed by outer appearances. Consider the stories of sudden inheritances, unexpected payments, and unforeseen windfalls. They are not accidents, they are proof of a law as exact as the laws of nature. The fact follows the state, the manifestation follows the assumption. Even in seemingly trivial matters, the principle holds. A student who assumes understanding will find comprehension arriving effortlessly. A worker who assumes efficiency and recognition will discover praise and success flowing naturally. A person who imagines health, vitality, and balance will find the body responding. In every case, the outer reality mirrors the inner assumption. To dwell in lack, to doubt, to hope, or to wait for proof is to perpetuate limitation. To assume abundance, to act in faith, to live the fulfilled state, is to command the outer world and draw letters, checks, confirmations, and abundance as naturally as a river flows to the sea. Now, let us examine the method by which this occurs. Close your eyes and imagine, as you have learned, the fulfillment of your desire. Picture the letters arriving, the checks being delivered, the opportunities confirmed. Hear the words of approval, feel the satisfaction, taste the relief, and live the emotion fully. Enter the state of having now, without hesitation, without reservation. Nightly repetition strengthens this state, consolidates the feeling, and impresses it upon your consciousness. The universe, impartial and exact, responds to this inner reality. Circumstance must conform, for the law obeys the consciousness that assumes, not the appearances that oppose. Consider the story of a young woman who sought reconciliation with a loved one. Outwardly, the opportunity seemed impossible, yet she imagined the conversation, felt the warmth of forgiveness, heard the words spoken, and dwelt in that state as real. Her days were conducted with the inner assurance that the reunion was complete. In time, the loved one reached out, the reconciliation occurred, and the outer world mirrored her assumption. Letters, confirmations, and tangible results followed because the inner state had been fully lived. The law cannot resist the consciousness that assumes reality. It is precise, impartial, and faithful. Faith is inseparable from this mystical practice. To assume the state and then falter before evidence is to weaken the law's effect. Persistence, courage, and unwavering conviction are required. Nightly meditation, the vivid experience of fulfillment, and the living of the inner scene with every sense engaged, these form the foundation. The letters, checks, confirmations, and abundance are the natural consequence of this disciplined, faithful assumption. The universe has no choice but to align with the consciousness fully engaged in its own reality. Imagine, if you will, a man struggling to pay a debt he believed insurmountable. Each night he imagined letters of confirmation arriving, checks in his hand, and a profound sense of relief and security. He repeated this every evening, entering the inner chamber with the vividness of imagination, the feeling of reality, and the conviction of faith. Gradually, the outer world obeyed. Payment was made, opportunity arose, provision arrived. The law had responded faithfully and inevitably to the state assumed. This demonstrates the power of consistent practice and the certainty of manifestation when consciousness is aligned. Let us also reflect upon the importance of gratitude in this process. While dwelling in the inner chamber, express thanks for the letters, checks, confirmations, and abundance you imagine. Gratitude reinforces the inner state, strengthens faith, and aligns your consciousness with the fulfillment you seek. It is a vital amplifier, turning the imagined scene into irresistible reality. A man who expressed silent gratitude nightly for imagined provisions found them appearing faster and more harmoniously. The universe responds to consciousness, and gratitude intensifies the alignment of feeling and assumption. Even the smallest details contribute to manifestation. Hear the envelope opening, feel the weight of the coins or notes, taste the relief, sense the approval, and imagine the joy fully. Each detail strengthens the inner state, and the outer world conforms. A student imagining mastery will experience comprehension flowing naturally. A worker assuming recognition will see praise and opportunity appear. A person assuming health will witness the body responding. The principle is universal. The outer must mirror the inner. The letters, checks, confirmations, and abundance follow the state assumed, and the law does not fail. Persistence is the hidden secret of manifestation. One evening is insufficient. Repetition consolidates the inner state, deepens the feeling, and engraves the reality upon consciousness. Nightly meditation, vivid imagination, and faithful assumption create a consciousness that the universe must obey. The letters, checks, confirmations, and abundance flow without effort to those who maintain the state, who act as though the desire is already fulfilled, and who persist despite outer appearances. The law is exact, unerring, and faithful. Consider the story of a merchant facing apparent ruin. Each night he imagined the letters arriving, the confirmations received, the checks in his hands. He felt relief, joy, and gratitude. Despite outward loss, provision returned, clients honored contracts, debts were cancelled, and profits multiplied. The mystical exercise of assuming fulfillment, of living the desired state, compelled the outer world to conform. This illustrates the immutable principle: letters, checks, confirmations, and abundance follow the state of consciousness fully assumed. Faith, imagination, persistence, and gratitude converge to produce manifestation. Nightly meditation strengthens these faculties. Enter the inner chamber with vivid imagination. Hear, see, taste, and feel the fulfillment. Assume the state fully, live it as now, persist despite appearances, and express gratitude for the provision imagined. The outer world cannot resist. The law is faithful, impartial, and precise. Letters, checks, confirmations, and abundance follow effortlessly to the consciousness aligned with fulfillment. Even when circumstances appear contrary, the law obeys. A man may experience delay, setbacks, or unexpected obstacles. Yet if he maintains the inner state, imagines the letters arriving, feels the abundance, and acts in faith, the outer world must conform. Circumstances cannot resist the law of consciousness. The mystical exercise, practiced consistently and vividly, draws letters, checks, confirmations, and abundance into manifestation. The law is precise, unwavering, and eternal. Nightly repetition, careful imagination, vivid feeling, and unwavering faith form the pillars of manifestation. Imagine the letters, hear the confirmations, feel the joy, taste the relief, and dwell in the state as now. Persist with courage, express gratitude, and allow the law to operate unseen. The outer world will obey. Provision, opportunity, confirmation, and abundance flow naturally to the consciousness, fully aligned with the desired reality. The silver and gold, the letters, checks, confirmations, and abundance follow the state assumed. They are the inevitable manifestation of faith applied in consciousness.